was very sensitive yesterday, the issue of archives, where are they going to be located? And we have had very emotional but also very serious discussions on what to do with archives. And if we do not put that in short-term and long-term perspective, then, you know, we have a conflict of interest among stakeholders that cannot be resolved. If we take into account short-term and long-term perspective, then we shall all agree that immediately there should be accessibility of the archives by all victims' organizations, all interested people in the region and elsewhere. But when we come to the issue of location of archive in this very moment, then we have those other powerful arguments heard as articulated by a representative of the Security Council Working Group, saying that residual mechanisms and archives have to be kept together, and for the time being it's rather plausible, hopefully waiting for the arrest of Mladic and Hadžić, that they should be located in Hague, which does not preclude the possibility that once that time comes, that they can be, after resolving issue of protecting privacy, protecting national security interest, that they could be, upon achieving consensus, be transferred back to the region. Secondly, concerning long-term and short-term perspective, it has been clearly stated here that Tribunal does not write history. It does not. But by establishing facts in a reliable matter, it provides solid, reliable building blocks for the historians, very important for the future process of reconciliation. We in this region had a tragical history, that facts that were not established after the Second World War, before the Second World War, during the Second World War, have made a lot of harm. We should not allow this to happen once again.
Yeah. Appreciate that. I know the registrar has a thought on this, please.
Thanks. I'd just like to follow on from Professor Steinberg's comment, because not the details, but I fully agree with him, the importance of the views of the youth, of the young people. And this came out also during the conference from two quite different perspectives. One, we heard from a number of the representatives of the victims' groups stating how what was so important was that the next generation, their children, did not have to live through what they've lived through. And we also, in the first panel, we heard from the EU delegate Pierre Mirel, who gave the example of his experience in France and how it took so long, and 55 years. He gave that example of 55 years before France was able to acknowledge an event that took place during the Second World War. For me, and our outreach activities, as I said, I want to revamp them, and that's exactly one of the areas I think we need to put a lot of emphasis is exactly into that, and working with local organisations such as the Youth Initiative. We've run a series of programs, speaking at schools in Kosovo. That's what I'd really like to place a lot of emphasis, and I'd like to work with local organisations to reach out to the youth as well.
Okay. Minister Arnott, please.
Indeed, the issue of the archive is a very interesting one. It is only logical for the residual mechanism to be collocated with the archives of the ICTY. What I would like to say is that the issue can be perceived from different perspectives, be it from the perspective of the legal profession and the needs placed upon it by the future trials. However, I believe that this conference has failed to address certain issues related to the residual mechanism and the archives. I am pleased to hear that the biannual budget of the ICTY has been approved. However, it will be very important for the closing strategy as to what sort of residual mechanisms is planned to be set up, when the fugitives will be arrested, how the mechanism will come into play, and where the archives will be located. So these are the issues that are directly connected to the closing strategy of the ICTY. I heard someone say the tribunal will close. Well, it can't close until you have still the accused serving sentences who will be asking for early release. If there is a protected witness who was granted protective measures by the ICTY, there will have to be someone to address that issue as well. I was pleased to hear the colleague from Croatia say that once everything is over and done, that the archives can migrate back to the region. You said also that the trials were organized hundreds of miles away from the crime site and in a different language. And now we've heard proposals that the archives should be located hundreds of miles away from the region. I don't think that the archives should be located that far away from Bosnia-Herzegovina as the center where all these events happened.
If I may, what I would want us to do is not to return fully to the discussion that we had yesterday about the archives. I think we aired that point, and different views were conveyed. Certainly, it won't be resolved in this room. So I know the State Minister wants to make a comment. I don't know if it was in regard to the archives or not. I just, if it is, please keep it very brief so we can move on. And I do want to throw the discussion over to the audience.
I will be very brief. Whilst attaching importance to the issue of the closing strategy of the ICTY, the government of the Republic of Serbia has presented its views to the UN Security Council on this issue in late October 2008, and the issue of archives was discussed there among other issues. So there is a position, an official position set forth by the government of the Republic of Serbia and presented to the UN Security Council. This because, of course, the individual countries were asked to give their opinion on it. So let us move on.
And I think it's important. I was pleased to see, and I believe this point may have been made, representatives of Security Council member states here at this conference and who traveled from New York. And I think it's very, very important that they be here, that they understand the views, not only in terms of official government communiques, but the views as expressed by many victims associations here. I do want to move on and open it up to you in the audience. And again, apologies for the tropical conditions in the room. It makes it tougher, I understand. I want to sum up a little bit before moving on and just say a word. In terms of the way forward, in terms of the various elements necessary to maximize the legacy of the tribunal, some of the salient points I'm hearing from the panel have to do with, one, the importance of, and this is not in order of priority, the importance of continued and renewed outreach work by the tribunal. We recently heard some important comments about the website and the need to reorganize it. Or reshape it a bit. I think the point that we started off with, and I do want to underscore, that is the role of political leadership in the countries most concerned and they're really providing, sometimes if against the tide, if necessary, understanding of why trials here and trials in capital or other venues back in the Balkans is so crucial. I think the point about the languages that the President mentioned yesterday and again today is a very important point in terms of what will be necessary to make the archives, wherever they are located, maximally accessible to the communities most affected by the crimes and scholars. I'm going to stop there and turn it over to you. This is the final panel, and what that will mean is if you want to make a comment and haven't had a chance to make a comment, please do so, but I implore you, out of respect for everyone else in the room who may want to speak, as well as the panelists who may want to respond, to keep those comments and questions very brief. And I confess to you up front, I'm going to give priority to people who we may not have heard from earlier over the last 2 days. I also want to announce, and I'm grateful to her for sharing it with me at the outset, that State Minister Pulalic is going to have to leave us early, unfortunately, and I think in fairness, we will give you, before you leave, the opportunity to make a final comment, but urgent business in Belgrade requires your return. We'll take questions in sets of 3, all right? Again, please keep them focused, and if you have a comment that hasn't been expressed previously, go for it, but keep that brief. In the far back there, yes, sir, you. Yeah. Okay.
My name is George Kegoro from the Kenyan section of the International Commission of Jurists. I live and work in Nairobi, Kenya, and I thank the organizers for inviting me. It's a long way to come from to this conference, which for me has been a very great eye-opener. I'd like to say that the ICTY has, at the time of the establishment of the ICTY, we did not have, of course, the Rome Statute and the benefits that and the assurance that it has given the international community that there's a framework for addressing serious international crimes. It is a legacy of the ICTY, and it needs to be recognized as such, that its success, together, of course, with what happened at the ICTR, has given the international community the confidence for establishing the more permanent framework through the ICC process. I'd like to say that, and this is sort of a question that was grappled with in the first session today and a bit of the second session, what has been the legacy for the ICTY to the countries in the Balkans that were involved in the conflict, and in terms of the national judiciaries. The international and the national have up to this moment remained separate streams. The ICTY is, as it were, a sort of